What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? In August 1944, American Sherman tank crews faced a terrifying reality. German Panthers and Tigers could kill them from 2,000 yards, while Sherman's 75mm guns barely scratched enemy armor beyond 500 yards. Every tank engagement was Russian roulette with metal coffins. But on September 18, 1944, everything changed. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison's Sherman crew received a crate of experimental ammunition marked HVAP tungsten core, extremely limited supply. The briefing officer said, "This round can penetrate anything the Germans have. Frontal armor, side armor, doesn't matter, but you only get 12 rounds. Make them count." That afternoon, Morrison's tank faced 5 German Panthers in an open field near Ericourt, France. The Germans attacked confidently. Their frontal armor was supposed to be invincible. Morrison fired one HVAP round at 200 yards. It punched straight through the Panther's glacis plate and detonated the ammunition. The German tank exploded. The other 4 Panthers retreated in panic, and Wehrmacht after-action reports would later admit, "American tungsten ammunition has rendered our armor advantage obsolete. If you want to know how chemistry defeated steel, subscribe now." This is the story of the day German tankers learned to fear Shermans. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison grew up in Detroit, working summers at the Ford River Rouge plant, learning how assembly lines turned raw steel into automobiles. When he enlisted in 1942, the Army made him a tank crewman. His mechanical knowledge was too valuable to waste in the infantry. They assigned him to the 4th Armored Division, gave him an M4 Sherman tank, and shipped him to England for the invasion of France. Jake loved his Sherman. It was reliable, fast, easy to maintain. The crew called it Detroit Steel, a tribute to Jake's hometown. Then they landed in Normandy on June 7, 1944, and Jake learned the terrible truth about his tank. The Sherman's 75mm gun could barely penetrate German armor beyond 500 yards. Meanwhile, German Panthers and Tigers could kill Shermans from 2,000 yards away. The Sherman's frontal armor was 50mm thick. Panther frontal armor 80mm sloped. Tiger 100mm. Sherman crews needed 5-to-1 numerical superiority to reliably kill a single German heavy tank. The brutal math was everywhere. In Bocage hedgerow country, Jake's platoon lost 3 Shermans in 2 weeks. Each time the same story. German tank spotted at long range. American commander orders advance. German 75mm or 88mm shell punches through Sherman armor like paper. Crew burns alive or bails out screaming. Jake survived because he was cautious, smart, and lucky. He never engaged Panthers at long range. Always flanked. Always used terrain. But even that wasn't enough. On August 12, 1944, near Mortain, Jake's best friend, Lieutenant Danny Cooper, tank commander of Iron Duke, took a Panther round through his frontal glacis at 400 yards. The shell penetrated, ignited the ammunition, and the Sherman exploded. Danny and his crew died instantly. Jake attended the funeral, listened to the chaplain talk about sacrifice. But all he could think was, we're fighting with inferior weapons, sending boys into metal coffins against enemies with better guns, better armor, better everything. That night, Jake wrote a letter he never sent. "Dear Mom, the Sherman is a death trap. The Germans call us Tommy Cookers because we burn so easily. Every engagement is suicide. We win through numbers, throwing 5 tanks at 1 German tank, accepting that 4 of us will die. I don't know how much longer my luck holds." 3 weeks later, Jake's luck changed. Not because he survived, but because someone in Washington finally gave American tankers a weapon that could kill. Panthers, they called it HVAP. And it would change everything. September 18, 1944, Jake's tank platoon was bivouacked near Ericourt, France, when 3 supply trucks arrived with cargo marked Top Secret, Ordnance Experimental. The platoon gathered as a munitions officer opened the crates. Inside, shells that looked different from standard 76mm ammunition. Longer, heavier. The projectiles had distinctive black bands around the casings. "Gentlemen," the officer began, "this is M93 high-velocity armor-piercing ammunition, HVAP, tungsten carbide core surrounded by lightweight sabot that falls away after firing. This round exits your barrel at 3,400 feet per second, 40% faster than standard AP rounds. Jake did the math in his head. Velocity meant kinetic energy. Kinetic energy meant penetration. How much can it penetrate? Someone asked. At 1,000 yards? 150 millimeters of armor. That's more than a panther's frontal glacis. More than a tiger's side armor. Gentlemen, this round can kill anything the Germans have. From any angle, the tankers erupted in questions. Why didn't they have this months ago? How much ammunition were they getting? The officer raised his hand for silence. Here's the problem. Tungsten is rare. We're in a global shortage. Each tank gets exactly 12 HVAP rounds. That's it. Once they're gone, you're back to standard ammunition. So use them wisely. 12 rounds. Against an enemy that fielded hundreds of panthers and tigers. Jake's loader, a farm kid from Iowa named Tommy, loaded the HVAP rounds into their ready rack with reverence, like handling religious artifacts. Each shell was marked M93 restricted use. That afternoon, they test-fired one round. Couldn't waste it, but needed to understand the ballistics. Jake aimed at a destroyed Panther Hulk 200 yards away, a tank they'd bypassed days earlier because its frontal armor was undamaged. HVAP loaded. Tommy called, "Fire!" The cannon roared. The shell screamed across the field at supersonic velocity. It hit the Panther's glacis plate dead center, the thickest, most protected part of the tank, and punched straight through. The sound was different, not the clang of deflection or ricochet, but a clean penetration followed by internal detonation. Jake stared through his scope at the Panther, with a fresh hole through its impenetrable armor. "Holy shit," Tommy whispered. "We can actually kill them now." Jake keyed the radio to platoon command. "Sergeant Morrison to command. HVAP is effective. Pete, HVAP is effective. We need more of these rounds, many more." But 12 was all they had, and the next morning they'd need every single one. September 19th, 1944, 0600 hours. Jake's platoon was positioned on a ridge overlooking open farmland near Aracourt when the radio crackled. All units, enemy armor approaching from the east. Multiple contacts. Estimate 15 to 20 panzers. Engage on sight. Jake grabbed his binoculars. Through morning mist, he saw them. German Panther tanks advancing in formation across the valley, maybe 800 yards out. Their long 75mm guns swept left and right, hunting for targets. Behind them, more Panthers, and behind those, at least 3 Tiger tanks. The monsters everyone feared. Standard doctrine, retreat. Let artillery soften them up. Call in air support. Don't engage Panthers at long range with Shermans, it's suicide. But Jake had HVAP. 11 rounds left after the test shot. Tommy, load HVAP. Sarge, they're still at 1-800 yards. Standard doctrine says, I know what doctrine says. Load HVAP. Tommy slammed the tungsten round into the breech. The shell seated with a metallic click that felt different. Heavier, more final. Jake tracked the lead Panther through his gun sight. The German tank was moving at maybe 10 miles per hour. Commander's hatch open, scanning for enemies they expected to outrange and outgun. They didn't know American tanks now had fangs. Jake calculated windage, elevation, lead time. 1,800 yards. This was an impossible shot with standard ammunition. But HVAP wasn't standard. Gunner, target Panther, 1-800 yards. His gunner, Corporal Hayes, adjusted the sight picture. Identified. Fire, the 76mm cannon erupted. The tungsten round screamed across 1-800 yards in under 3 seconds. Jake watched through his scope as the shell hit the Panther's turret front, the second most protected area after the glacis, and penetrated. The Panther stopped. Smoke poured from hatches. The turret crew bailed out, uniforms on fire. The entire German formation halted. Confusion. How did a Sherman penetrate Panther armor at 1-800 yards? Possible. Jake keyed the radio. All units, HVAP is effective at extreme range. Engage with confidence. We can kill them now. 4 more Shermans opened fire. 4 more HVAP rounds. 3 hits. 3 Panthers stopped burning. The German advance faltered. Then something happened that Jake had never seen before. Panthers retreated, backed up, sought cover. They were afraid. But Jake's celebration lasted exactly 10 seconds, because that's when 20 more Panthers crested the ridge behind the first group, and Jake had only 6 HVAP rounds left. 20 Panthers, 6 HVAP rounds. Jake's mental calculator worked overtime. 5 Shermans in his platoon, 6 HVAP each equals 30 total tungsten rounds. Against 25 German tanks with superior armor and guns, the math didn't work. But math never stopped Detroit assembly lines from building the impossible. All units conserve HVAP, fire only at commanders' tanks and close-range threats, standard AP for targets of opportunity. The Panthers advanced more cautiously now, having learned that Sherman suddenly had teeth. They spread out, used terrain, moved in bounds. Textbook Panzer tactics designed to minimize casualties. Jake identified the German command tank by its antenna configuration and aggressive positioning. Tommy, HVAP. Target Panther at 1400 yards, left flank, commander's tank. HVAP loaded. Fire! The round punched through the Panther's turret side. The tank slewed to a stop, commander's hatch blown open, no movement inside. Without their commander, the German attack coordination fractured. 5 HVAP rounds left. A Panther broke through on the right flank, closing to 800 yards. Danger range where even standard German AP could reliably penetrate Sherman armor. Jake swiveled the turret, but another Sherman, Thunderbolt, commanded by Sergeant Davis, fired first. VAP at 800 yards. The Panther's frontal glacis exploded inward. The tank stopped dead, ammunition cooking off internally. 4 platoon HVAP rounds remaining across all tanks. The German Tigers finally entered the fight. At 200 yards, their 88mm guns could kill Shermans all day. But Tigers were slow, methodical. Jake watched one Tiger commander scan the battlefield through binoculars, calculating his next move. Hayes, can you hit a Tiger at 2,200 yards? I can try, Sarge. Tommy, HVAP, last precision shot. Jake knew this was it, the longest shot he'd ever attempt. Miss, and they'd wasted irreplaceable tungsten. Hit, and they'd prove HVAP could defeat even the King Tiger's legendary armor. Target Tiger, 2,200 yards. Aim for lower glasses. Hayes made microscopic adjustments. Wind, drop. Lead time for a stationary target. Fire. The 3-second flight felt eternal. The HVAP round struck the Tiger's lower hull. Not the strongest armor, but the only part visible at extreme range. The tungsten penetrated. The Tiger lurched, stopped, began burning. German crews watched their invincible Tiger die to a Sherman at impossible range. And that's when the Panthers broke, retreated, fled. Not an organized withdrawal. Panic. The Battle of Aricourt lasted 3 days. Jake's platoon destroyed 17 Panthers and 3 Tigers. American losses: 4 Shermans damaged, 2 destroyed, 9 crew killed. In previous engagements, those numbers would have been reversed. 17 Shermans lost for 4 German tanks destroyed. HVAP had inverted the equation. On September 22nd, intelligence officers arrived to debrief tank commanders. They wanted every detail: engagement ranges, penetration results, German tactical responses. But what they really wanted was sitting in a captured German headquarters vehicle. After-action reports written by surviving Panzer commanders. An intelligence captain translated one document aloud to Jake's assembled platoon. September 19, 1944. Kampfgruppe Report. Enemy Sherman tanks equipped with new high-velocity ammunition demonstrated penetration capabilities exceeding all previous assessments. Panther frontal armor, previously considered immune to Sherman 75 meters and 76 millimeter fire beyond 1,000 meters, was penetrated at ranges exceeding 1,800 meters. Multiple Panthers destroyed by frontal strikes that should have been impossible. Recommend immediate armor upgrades and revised engagement doctrine. Current Panther armor advantage has been negated. Psychological impact on crews severe. Many commanders now hesitate to engage enemy. Shermans at ranges previously considered safe assessment. American tungsten ammunition represents fundamental shift in armor warfare balance. Our tanks no longer possess decisive technological superiority. Victory will depend on tactical skill, not armor thickness. The American tankers sat in stunned silence. Then someone started laughing, not from humor but from relief, vindication, and the absurd reversal of 2 months of terror. Jake thought about Danny Cooper. burned alive in Iron Duke because his Sherman couldn't penetrate Panther armor. Thought about every crew that died in metal coffins while German tankers sat comfortably behind impenetrable steel. How much HVAP can we get? Jake asked the intelligence officer. That's the problem. Tungsten shortages mean limited production. High Command is rationing HVAP to critical sectors. You'll get maybe 30 rounds per month per tank. That's it, 30 rounds per month. Against an enemy that fielded thousands of Panthers and Tigers. HVAP was a miracle, but a rationed one. Jake looked at his crew. Then we make every round count. No wasted shots. No panic firing. We're not the underdog anymore. The Germans fear us now. Let's make sure they never stop. But the real story wasn't the battle. It was what happened next. When Jake's report reached the highest levels of command and changed American armor doctrine forever. Jake Morrison's after-action report from Aracourt traveled up the chain of command with unprecedented speed. Within 2 weeks, it landed on the desk of General George S. Patton, commander of the Third Army. Patton read it twice, then called a meeting with ordnance officers. Why the hell do my tankers only have 12 HVAP rounds per tank when we've got ammunition that can kill Panthers at 2,000 yards? The answer was tungsten scarcity. Global supply was limited. Competing priorities, aircraft armor, machine gun rounds, industrial tooling, all demanded tungsten. The U.S. Army had to ration, but Patton made HVAP production a priority. By November 1944, Sherman units were receiving 50 HVAP rounds per tank monthly. By January 1945, 80 rounds. By March, unlimited supply as tungsten sources expanded and industrial production ramped up. The impact was devastating for German armor. From September 1944 through May 1945, American Sherman tanks destroyed over 2,700 Panthers and Tigers on the Western Front. German after-action reports became increasingly desperate. October 1944. Enemy tungsten ammunition has eliminated our armor advantage. Panther crews refused to engage Sherman tanks at ranges we previously considered safe. December 1944. Tiger commanders report that frontal armor no longer provides protection. American Shermans can penetrate at all combat ranges. February 1945. Morale among Panzer crews collapsing. They consider Sherman tanks equally dangerous to Panthers and Tigers. Armor superiority no longer factors in tactical planning. The psychological shift was as important as the physical penetration. For 2 years, German tankers had felt invincible behind thick armor. HVAP shattered that confidence. Panthers that once advanced aggressively now hesitated, sought cover, retreated. The hunter had become the hunted. Jake Morrison fought through France, across the Rhine into Germany. His crew, Tommy Hayes, driver Wilson, and radio operator Martinez, survived the entire war without losing a single man. An almost impossible feat for a Sherman crew. They attributed their survival to HVAP, not because they used it constantly. Rationing meant they still relied on standard AP ammunition for most engagements. But because German tankers knew Shermans might be carrying tungsten rounds, that uncertainty changed everything. Panthers didn't press attacks. Tigers maintained distance. The Germans fought cautiously, defensively. Fear is as powerful as armor. On May 8, 1945, Jake's tank was positioned outside Munich when the ceasefire was announced. The crew sat on Detroit Steel's hull, drinking liberated German beer, trying to process survival. "You know what I just realized?" Tommy said. "We killed 7 Panthers, 7, with a tank everyone said was a death trap." Jake thought about that. In June 1944, 1 Sherman versus 1 Panther was a death sentence. By May 1945, it was an even fight. The Sherman hadn't changed. Same armor, same mobility, same mechanical reliability. What changed was the ammunition. One technological innovation, tungsten-cored projectiles, had rebalanced the entire European tank war. Jake returned home to Detroit in June 1945, honorably discharged with the Silver Star for actions at Aracourt. He returned to Ford Motor Company, eventually becoming a production manager. He rarely talked about the war, but in his basement workshop, Jake kept a deactivated HVAP round, mounted on a wooden plaque. Visitors who asked about it got a simple answer. That's the shell that saved my life. The full story only came out in 1967 when a military historian researching the Battle of Aracourt tracked Jake down for an interview. Do you think HVAP ammunition won the war? The historian asked. Jake thought carefully. No, wars aren't won by single weapons. But HVAP changed the calculus. Before Aracourt, German tankers knew they had better tanks. They attacked confidently. After HVAP, they knew American tanks could kill them from any angle at any range. That changes how you fight. Makes you cautious, defensive. And defensive armies don't win wars. The German reports we captured are remarkable. Multiple commanders specifically mentioned tungsten ammunition as the reason they lost armor superiority. They're not wrong, Jake said. The Panther was a better tank than the Sherman in almost every way. Armor, firepower, even crew comfort. But it had one fatal flaw. It assumed American guns couldn't penetrate German armor. That assumption died at Aracourt. And once the assumption died, the psychological advantage collapsed. Do you feel vindicated? After months of fighting in inferior tanks? Jake shook his head. I feel grateful. Grateful someone in ordnance developed HVAP. Grateful they got it to us before more of my friends died. Grateful that Tommy, Hayes, Wilson, and Martinez all made it home. The Sherman wasn't a death trap because of bad design. It was a death trap because we were fighting with the wrong ammunition. Fix the ammunition and suddenly the Sherman became good enough. Good enough to win. Good enough to survive. That's all any tanker wants. Jacob Morrison died in 1994 at age 76 in his Detroit home. His obituary mentioned his Ford career and military service. It didn't explain that he'd been part of the technological turning point in armored warfare. But at his funeral, his son displayed the HVAP round from the basement workshop. He told mourners, "Dad kept this shell for 49 years. He said it represented the difference between impossible and possible, between death and survival, between technology that works and technology that fails. He said the lesson wasn't about tanks or ammunition. It was about this. Sometimes the difference between winning and losing is one good idea implemented at the right time. The tungsten shortage meant HVAP was always rationed, never abundant. But it didn't need to be abundant, just needed to exist. The knowledge that American Shermans could penetrate any German armor was enough to change German tactics, break German confidence, and rebalance the tank war. Here's what they don't teach in history books. Wars are won by logistics, production and morale as much as battlefield tactics. HVAP ammunition didn't make the Sherman better than the Panther. It made German tankers believe Shermans were equally dangerous. And belief shapes battles. Jake Morrison and thousands of tankers like him didn't defeat panzers through superior vehicles. They won through superior ammunition, better production, and the refusal to accept technological disadvantage. When American industry couldn't build heavier tanks fast enough, they built better shells instead. That's the real lesson. Victory isn't always about having the best equipment. Sometimes it's about making the equipment you have good enough, and making your enemy believe you're unstoppable. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Drop a comment about a time clever innovation beat superior force. Share this so people remember Aracourt, the battle where chemistry defeated steel, where tungsten changed tank warfare, where American crews finally got the weapons they deserved. Jake Morrison fought 7 months in a death trap Sherman. Then someone gave him tungsten ammunition. And suddenly the death trap became a weapon of war. The Sherman didn't change. The ammunition did, and that made all the difference. Remember, frontal armor means nothing when chemistry can punch through steel like paper. The Germans learned that the hard way, at down 800 yards. With tungsten doing the teaching,